What is going on, guys? Today we are attempting to win $5,000 in fantasy hockey. We are doing the new Drafters NHL Best Ball Fantasy Championship for the playoffs, and the top prize is $5,000. Basically how it works, if you've done a playoff pool with any of your friends, it's kind of similar. What you do is you draft 14 players for the Stanley Cup Playoffs, and whichever team ends up with the most points wins the top prize. And even though $5,000 is the first prize, there are other prizes as well. Second place gets $2,000, third place gets $1,000. There's prizes for the top 417 teams. So there is a way to make money if your team doesn't win, as long as they do decently well. To cover some more rules here, like I told you earlier, you draft 14 players, but only 7 of them are going to be accounted in terms of your total fantasy points. So 2 defensemen, 1 goalie, 3 forwards, and 1 flex. They're going to put your high scoring forwards into the forward positions, those 3 forward positions, the 2 highest scoring defensemen, the high scoring goalie, and then into the flex, your other high scoring position. Now, if we're looking at the scoring settings, this is very important to understand, as it always is in fantasy hockey. Some of you are in category leagues, bangers, cats. Some leagues count hits, some leagues don't. So for the scoring settings for drafters, what it is 3 for a goal, 2 for an assist, 0.5 for a power play point, 2 for a shorthanded goal, 0.3 for a shot, 0.3 for a block, and 1 for an overtime goal. So no points for hits whatsoever. You're not going to be looking at those guys like maybe a player like Sam Bennett. He won't have an edge against other players because hits won't matter. So something to note. And then in terms of the goalie stats, 2 for a win, 1 for an overtime / shootout loss, 0.2 for saves, -1 for goals against, and 3 for a shutout. Now you can do up to 100 drafts if you want, and I want to walk you through this draft. But before we do this, I just want to give you guys the best promo available for this website, and that is promo code FIREDUP. Now, if you haven't used Drafters before, you haven't deposited on Drafters, what you can do is use my promo code FIREDUP. This will give you the best promo out of the entire website. So they have an initial one. If you go on the website, I don't know the exact code. It's like welcome 50. It only gives you a 50% match deposit up to 100. So 20 gets you 10, 100 gets you 50. It's good, but promo code FIREDUP gets you a 100% match deposit. So if you put in 20, you get 40. 100 gets you 200. 50 gets you 100. It's the best deal on there. So if you haven't used Drafters and you want to do these tournaments, make sure you click the link in the description. This link will take you to the desktop version if you're on desktop, and it will automatically have FIREDUP in the referral code when you sign up. If you're not on desktop, you're on mobile, go to iOS. You can download Drafters Fantasy Sports on iOS, and make sure when you sign up using referral code FIREDUP. So by doing that, when you go to deposit, the code FIREDUP will automatically be in the promo code when you go to deposit. So make sure you do that. As you guys can see, I'm on the desktop version right now. The mobile version is very similar. And you can see right here under lobby, you're going to have all the sports available. So NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, and PGA. Obviously, we're going to click on the NHL here. And at the very top is going to be the $11 Drafters NHL Playoffs Best Ball Championship. To join this draft, obviously, you would need to deposit and have money in your account using that promo code FIREDUP to give you guys the best deal. It's $11 per draft, so you click join, and what that will do is it will register you for the draft, and you have to wait until it fills up. Whether you're on desktop or mobile, you'll get a notification when the draft fills up, so you know when it's starting. You'll have 2 minutes in like a pre-lobby, and then the draft will start. I would highly recommend downloading the mobile app because you'll get an actual notification on your phone. When I'm working and if I'm in a draft, I don't want to be on the same tab and just have it open. I want to be able to just be doing other stuff on my PC and then have that notification pop up on my phone. So I would recommend doing that, but doing either or is fine. With that being said, make sure you guys have all of your notifications on so you know when your draft is starting after you register. As you guys can see, we're in the draft right now. There's 6 people per draft, 14 rounds. And the great thing about Drafters is that with the scoring settings, you can actually sort by average fantasy points per game. So that's going to be really helpful. You don't need to use those other tools that I told you about in the past. If you're on a platform like Yahoo, where you're going to have to figure out, okay, which players are actually good according to my league settings. So this does it all for you. You'll see the ADP here. So you can sort by ADP. You can sort by average. You can go under teams and look at all the players on specific teams, go to forwards, defensemen, goalies. And what you could also do is queue up players. So you see the star right here. If I want to queue up Connor McDavid, put him in the queue. If I want to draft Edmonton Oilers players for this draft, I can click on Edmonton. Okay, I can queue up Zach Hyman, and that's going to help you be prepared for when it's your time to make a pick. Each team only has 30 seconds to make a pick. The draft goes by pretty fast because of this, but you're going to want to make sure you know which players you are drafting, or else you're going to risk waiting 30 seconds and having to autofill for you. I've done this a couple of times myself, so make sure you guys are locked in when you're making these picks. In terms of understanding how the draft works, that's pretty much all there is to it. If you've done fantasy hockey drafts, you know what the deal is. You draft your players, you finish the draft, you look at your team. But what I really want to do for you guys right now is give you guys my favorite strategies to help you potentially win thousands of dollars in this tournament. The number one strategy to me is pretty obvious, and that strategy is drafting the top players on the two teams that you think are going to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. When I start a draft, I have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to do, and the reason for this is because if you want to be the number one team in this draft, you're probably drafting the top players on the teams that go furthest in the playoffs. So, for example, I just did a draft where I focused on Carolina Hurricanes players and Edmonton Oilers players. The reason I did this is because I think that's a pretty likely Stanley Cup final matchup. Now, obviously, you're not going to be able to take all the top players from the two teams that you're targeting for the Stanley Cup Finals. So what that means is you're going to have to draft players from different teams. With that in mind, the other most important tip that I want to tell you guys to do is do not draft players from teams in the same division. If you guys understand how the playoffs work in terms of the bracket, you would know that the teams that are in the same division, they will not be facing each other in the conference finals. Now, if we take the Atlantic Division, for example, right now we have the Bruins, the Florida Panthers, and the Toronto Maple Leafs in those top spots. And in terms of drafting players, if you think that the Leafs are going to make it to the finals and you want to focus your draft on Toronto Maple Leafs players, you definitely don't want to draft players from the Bruins or the Panthers on your team. Like I told you, you draft 14 players, but only 7 of them account for your total fantasy points. So it's very likely that these are going to be players that either make it to the conference finals or the Stanley Cup finals. This can be said the same for the Metropolitan Division, Carolina and the Rangers. I'm not going to be drafting players from both of those teams on my fantasy team in each draft. The Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche, the Oilers and the Vancouver Canucks. If you do this, you are worsening your chances at winning those top prizes. So that's definitely a huge tip. My last tip for you guys would be looking at the teams as they stand and trying to figure out which teams have the easiest path to the Stanley Cup Finals. The only problem is right now, if you're like me doing drafts, the bracket is not set. So certain matchups will change, and that does impact how some teams are going to do in terms of their path. But as things stand, I would say the Metropolitan Division, the Hurricanes and the Rangers, I think they have the easiest path to the Stanley Cup Finals. The reason I say this is because right now the Rangers are in the top spot. They are likely going to face the worst wildcard team, and at the moment, that's looking like either Philly, the Capitals, the Red Wings, the New York Islanders, or the Pittsburgh Penguins. You also have the Hurricanes, which are second in this division, and regardless of what happens, they're likely going to have a really easy first round opponent too. They're going to either face Philly, they're either going to face the Capitals. Like, that should be an easy 4 or 5 game matchup for the Hurricanes. Other than that division, some other teams definitely have some harder paths. If we're looking at the Central Division in the West, the Stars, the Avalanche, and the Jets, that is tough. Only one of those teams is going to make it to the conference finals, so that could be very difficult. Obviously, an Oilers and Knights first round matchup could be a disaster for either one of those teams. We have the Canucks here, who I think are frauds, so don't know what's going to happen there. But with the Atlantic Division, Bruins, Panthers, Leafs, that's really tough too. Only one of those teams are going to make it to the conference finals. So it should be very interesting to see what happens. But in general, I would say the Metropolitan Division, in terms of those top 2 teams being the Rangers and the Hurricanes, have the current easiest path. Now that I've given you guys some strategies, I want to show you a team that I drafted today. If you're looking at this team here, you can tell that I focused on 3 teams specifically, these teams being the Edmonton Oilers, the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Dallas Stars. The reason I did this is because I think there's a good chance the Stars and the Oilers meet in the conference finals, so whichever team wins gets to face the Eastern Conference team. That kind of provides a safety net for me. Obviously, the Avalanche can make it to the finals. The Vegas Golden Knights could, some of these other teams, but having those 2 Western Conference teams gives me a nice safety net for the team that will eventually make it to the finals. Now, obviously, you only can draft so many players. So with the Eastern Conference team, I chose the Carolina Hurricanes. If the Carolina Hurricanes don't make it to the finals, then this draft is probably not going to win the top prize. But if they do, I have greater odds by having 2 strong Western Conference teams. So basically what I'm doing is trying to maximize my chances of finding those top players that are going to make it to the finals and rack up the most fantasy points. You could do a number of teams with a strategy. Like I'm going to do a bunch of these drafts. So, I might do a draft where I do, the Florida Panthers paired with the Avalanche and the Dallas Stars. Or I might do a draft where I focus on the Dallas Stars paired with the New York Rangers and the Boston Bruins. I am trying to focus mainly on 3 teams in these drafts. You could do 4 potentially, but it's going to be hard to get top players on all of those teams. So that would be my strategy. I really like the way that this draft worked out. So if we're looking at it, McDavid, Hyman, Bouchard, Skinner were those Oilers players that I got. If the Oilers make it to the finals, these guys have a great chance of getting into the positions that need to be filled, right? So with Dallas, Jason Robertson, Wyatt Johnston, we also have Matt Duchene. These guys could easily pop off and have a great Stanley Cup run. Miro Heiskanen, Jake Ottinger. This could be really good. And then for Carolina, obviously Gensel, Seth Jarvis. We also have Brady Shea. These guys could have a pretty good run as well. I picked up Kochetkov in the last round just because, I needed another goalie, and there's a chance that he gets a decent amount of starts. But in general, I'm pretty happy with this draft, and I think that there's a good chance it does well. Now, if we're looking at betting odds, I have a screenshot to show you guys. The Hurricanes are the #1 favorite to win the Stanley Cup final today. We also have the Panthers, the Avalanche, the Stars, the Oilers being up there, followed by the Rangers, the Golden Knights, the Bruins, the Leafs, the Canucks, the Jets. And then we have those heavy underdogs like the Kings, the Lightning, the Predators, the Flyers, the Islanders, etc. So if you want to look at that and have that influence your opinion, feel free. It is interesting to look at. There's also analytics that you can look at. You can look at some of the analytic darlings like Dom from The Athletic. If you're looking at his projections, he thinks the Carolina Hurricanes have a 24% chance of winning the Cup. And then you have the Oilers being the second favorite, the Stars, the Florida Panthers, and then the Vegas Golden Knights. So that's how his models are showing the percentages. Obviously, these models and analytics are good tools to look at, but they don't show the whole picture, obviously. The Hurricanes had the highest percentage last year as well, according to Dom's model, and you saw that they didn't win the finals. It was the Vegas Golden Knights. So, use it as a tool. Don't, take it blindly, but it is interesting to look at some of the analytics and the betting odds. The last thing I want to do for you guys is I was talking to drafters about this. They came up with a great idea to give some free tickets away to do these best ball drafts. Like I told you, each draft is $11 US. So if you have a free ticket, it's free of charge, and you could potentially win thousands of dollars. So to enter the contest to potentially win a free ticket, I'm going to be doing this for the next couple of videos, giving one free ticket away to a random person in the comments. All you have to do is comment your drafter's username. For everyone that comments their username, I'm going to put it into a randomizer, and if I pick you, you will get a free ticket, and you can use that and draft alongside with me to potentially win thousands of dollars. The cutoff time for this tournament is 3 p.m. EDT on April 20th. That is the last day you can do a tournament. Like I told you, you can do up to 100 of them and potentially win all these great prizes. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I am in love with these best ball tournaments. I know that you guys are going to love them too. If you've never done one before, this is the future of fantasy, in my opinion. Fantasy sports, not just hockey, but all fantasy sports. So yeah, make sure you use my promo code. Make sure you head on over to Drafters Fantasy Sports, and I hope that you can potentially win some of these great prizes that they've offered. That is the end of the video. Hit that like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I will catch you in the next one.